About 5 years ago, one lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street on my side was the silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and then stopped, dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward. Smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him, and then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say, at this point I ran away, or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the fuck do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. What the foo? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling, and then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance-walking away. Just like that, not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go, until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off of the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see. So this story happens to my mother's co-worker couples of years ago. It sounds unbelievable, but my mom and I are among the witnesses throughout the ordeal. This is a long story, and please bear with me as English is my second language. She's married for almost 12 years and had 2 daughters. Although she's getting old, 39, she really wanted a son, so they kept trying. Until one day she experienced the morning sickness and she missed her period. A simple pregnancy test kit confirmed that she was pregnant. She went to this new clinic no one ever heard of, with a nice doctor and nurses, sometimes chatted with few patients there. As she has experience being pregnant with her 2 daughters, she was familiar with all the procedure. Going to the clinic every month for checkup, the technician did ultrasound on her and revealed she's going to have a boy. You can imagine how overjoyed she was. She shared the good news with her co-worker, including my mom. I met her at the family day of my mom's workplace, and I saw exactly how a pregnant woman should be. At the time, she was already 7 months along. One day my mom told me that she didn't come to work for almost 2 weeks. They figured maybe she went into labor. Calls to her house went unanswered. My mom got worried, especially since my mom is one of her close friends. 1 month later she comes to work as usual, but with flat tummy. At first, my mom thought that it seems weird since she was supposed to be resting at home for 2 months. Our local custom forbid women to leave home after giving birth for 60 days. My mom asked her about the baby and what did they name him. Her answer was, there was no baby. Of course, being someone close to her, my mom completely shocked. She asked her more questions, but she only said there was no baby and started to tear up right there. At home, my mom told me about it, and my only speculation was that maybe her baby died at birth. Few weeks after that, she pulled my mom aside during lunch and proceeded to say that she can't take it anymore. She needs to talk to someone beside her husband. At night of her 35th weeks of pregnancy, she began feeling some contraction, but she brushed it as false alarm since it's a long way to go. After feeling a bit better, she went to sleep. At dawn, she was awakened by her husband. She opened her eyes to see her husband staring at her belly. Noticed something must be wrong. She touched her pregnant belly, only to realize that it was flat. She freaked out and started to check under the bed, anywhere around the house. She screamed at her husband. She told my mom her neighbor went to check on her after hearing her scream, to call the clinic. No one answered the phone. He figured maybe since it was early in the morning, the clinic still closed, so they went to the hospital instead. At the hospital, she told the doctors her situation. After thorough inspection, the doctor told her that there was no sign of pregnancy or labor. He told her she might experience a phantom pregnancy, which was impossible since she had it checked and scanned. to con Vince the doctor. She promised to be back with her pregnancy report and the ultrasound copy. When she went home, she goes straight to her room to find that the report was nowhere to be found. Even the ultrasound copy that was taped to the bathroom mirror was gone. Her husband suggested that they go to the clinic to ask for a copy of report there. When she went to the clinic, guess what? There was no clinic, only an old tire store. Her husband asked the owner, and they said they had been there for the last 10 years. Never saw any clinic. In my culture, there were shaman, witches, and midwife. She went to all three, and they all couldn't figure out what happened. The only possibility is that the baby might have been abducted by Orang Bunyan. Now she still works there and is entering the 50s. The event affects her a little bit, but she's still the same woman my mom friend with. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new episodes. Share your stories and impressions in the comments, and maybe your story will become a masterpiece in one of our upcoming videos. Let's dive into the world of slimes and stories together.